Hello, fellow nerds. This is Jean, and I am a nerd that knits. Finnish socks. I don't know if you've seen them. Have you seen them? They are everywhere. And they are everywhere if you follow sock knitters on Facebook, if you see them on Ravelry, if you see them in Instagram. They're beautiful. They're amazing. But I mean, what's the deal with them? So please bear with me as we talk about the beautiful, the majestic, the history of Finnish socks. So, what are Finnish socks? What's up with these socks? Finnish socks are referred to as woolly socks. They were coined as woolly socks by the Finnish people, and they are considered to be the national costume to Finnish people. Woolly socks are essential to Finnish people. The climate of Finland requires warmth and comfort, mainly because the winter season in Finland can last 6 months out of the year. Yes, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really know much about Finland. I did know where Finland was located on the map, so woohoo! Yes, I can read a map. So I definitely know that it'd be cold where Finland is. The Finns have a long tradition of knitted socks. Now this just boggled my mind. It's believed knitting in Finland was picked up by nuns at a monastery in the 15th and 16th centuries, and then in their knitting folklore it is said that the residents spread the knitting techniques to the rest of the area, so basically to like all the local townspeople. In the 16th and 19th centuries, knitting was a cottage industry. So when I think of cottage industry, I think of like the OG of like side hustle. So basically homemakers would be at home doing everything that they're doing, and then like they put the baby down for a second and they're knitting socks, and then basically to earn some extra income on the side, then they would sell the socks at maybe at a local market, or maybe they would make some socks for a family member or for someone else. So in 1866, knitting was a required subject in school. It was a part of the general education for everyone, and that is just really cool to me. And then in 1928, Novita, a famous Finnish company, was started. Today, it's considered one of the biggest yarn manufacturers in the Nordic countries. So I know you might be thinking, but why do I care about a yarn company? And I'm cannot stress this enough. Every single Finnish pattern I've found that is sock, they suggest Novita yarns. So obviously this is not just some yarn company. And in fact, this picture right here was taken off the Novita website, and I believe you can find this pattern on their website. I'm not sure if you can get it translated into English, but they do have quite a few Finnish designs. They really are a very famous yarn manufacturer. Modern patterns technique in yarn has changed past traditions. I feel that that's just it's going to happen with time and with technology, even with us. Over the years, we went from like yarn that was dyed with colors found in nature to now we do chemical dyes. And then also, I mean, yarn has changed. I mean, wool is not super itchy anymore. So, I mean, we've really made strides in doing it all. So, in a Finnish radio report, it was noted that woolly socks are an integral part of common attire for Finns. It is even accepted workplace attire. And that totally makes sense to me, especially when it's a necessity. They live in an area where their climate expects them to be dressed a certain way. So the famous Finnish train sock story. Now, when I first heard this story, I didn't know it was a Finnish story. I thought it could be a German story, it could be a Russian story, it could have been any any culture, and mainly because all the details weren't there, but enough details were there, so I was like, oh, okay. So even if you didn't know this was a Finnish train story, I feel it applies to any culture. So here are the details. So back in the early 1940s, civilians were evacuated during World War II via train. A bombing disturbed the train tracks and they were being repaired. During that time, a knitter unraveled her own sweater to make these baby socks for a fellow passenger's 2-month-old child. Now this story just makes you all warm and fuzzy because it shows you like the best of humanity, and it is such a beautiful testament to just basic human survival and basic necessities, and how people are just so willing to take, quite literally, the shirt off their back for our fellow humans. So it's such a beautiful story. And then you see the little socks there, and some people say that they kind of remind them of train tracks. And then here's a picture of a baby with the socks on. The design is simple, cute, and very versatile, but most importantly, it stays snugly on those little toes. And these socks do stay put, which is very nice because socks don't stay put. I swear, I've been through a lot of socks over the years and on my kids, and they don't stay very well. So Finns knit for charity. These were a couple of stories that I had found. I am sure there are a lot more, but I'm just going to talk about these two in particular. So residents knit socks for Ukrainian soldiers. This was such a cool story. I saw it. There was a link to the bigger story, but it was all in, I'm guessing it was in Finnish, so I couldn't read the whole story. But it's such a sweet, sweet gesture. 20,000 pairs of socks is not a small feat, and that is pun not intended. It's a lot of work. So it's such a beautiful gesture. Once again, just showing the beautiful side of humanity. And then in 2015, socks were given to a number of asylum seekers, and socks are usually made for elderly, babies, veterans. Charity has a long tradition in Finn culture. And I love the fact that they're still continuing to do this charity work. I remember back during World War II, I know that in America and I think parts of UK, they had like sock knitting drives for soldiers. And I know specifically that America did because when I was younger, I would read books from the American Girl dolls, and the American Girl doll Molly is the girl that had her stories from World War II. And in her stories, she was talking about a school project where all the girls were asked, and I don't know if it was boys, it was a long time ago, guys. So basically they were asked to knit socks for the soldiers, and she really didn't, either she didn't like it or she didn't want to knit socks, I don't remember, but I just remember that. And I also remember seeing those posters of like, knit socks for our boys. And so I would not be surprised if the Finns did exactly that, during World War II as well, because it was just something that was done for sure. And now that I'm older and I've knit a couple of pairs of socks, I have some questions for these people that make socks for charity. So what particularly do you do? How do you just happen to know the soldier's foot size, or do you just knit so many socks for one particular foot? I got questions, people. And so obviously the Finns are doing some beautiful charity work, and so like I said, those are only a couple of stories. I'm sure there's a lot more. So these are a couple of patterns that I found on Ravelry that I absolutely love. I will definitely be making them for myself in the future. I also am a sucker for color. So I love these vibrant colors, and I love the skulls. The skulls are so cool. The skulls are so cool. I'm not sure if that's a worsted weight. I think it could be a fingering, which might take me forever to make them, but I don't care. They're beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So I would encourage you to look at Finnish socks. There's nothing like them. They are just so unique, and they're so beautiful. A long, long traditional line, and it's amazing. I didn't really even know much about the traditional Finnish sock until I started really doing my own deep dive, and it's just amazing what kind of background it has. So these are the socks that I made. This is the Aurora KAL worsted weight. Now mine, my cuff I did 4 needle, and then for the leg I did 5. And it was published in February 22, 3 colors. And then obviously the pattern is in English and in Finnish. Now, what I find very interesting about this particular pattern is that you kind of have to dive. You kind of have to dive for the English. It's kind of like there's Finnish and English mixed in the pattern, and so you kind of have to read through it. It is like a 10-page pattern. It's a long pattern. I will say I did some modifications on the 3rd pattern down the leg. It's kind of like a heart-shaped clover. And I didn't really think that went well with kind of the overall kind of winter wonderland vibes. That's how I felt, because there's a couple of snowflakes on this. And so I put trees. I put some happy trees on the socks. So happy trees are on my pair of socks. And then when I made this pattern, I also didn't do as many decreases as she did on her calves. I have little beefier calves, I guess, and so I didn't taper them down as much as she did on her pattern.
So this is the part of the pattern that I wasn't really excited about. So I've modified this pattern, and I'm going to show you what I modified it to, and you can modify it if you want to as well. I put happy little trees here. That's right. This was supposed to be some kind of heart clover motif, and this particular motif I thought very Valentine's Day like, and I was like, that's messing up the vibe of this very winter wonderland, perfect snowflake, just argyle kind of motif here, and just this is kind of also, a little kind of Christmassy or, a little wintry. So for this particular pattern, I put in this lovely tree. Yes, it is a pattern of my own creation. Now, mind you, I have not blocked this yet. So I'm going to do the tree motif on this one. I am actually going to show you what I'm going to be knitting because I can't, because it's my creation. It's my tree that I came up with, as opposed to a tree that the designer came up with. So please do not mock me for my amazing, gorgeous graphic skills on this one. I quite literally made this on a whim, and it looks oh so professional. Oh, very, very professional. So yes, in case you ever want to make your own graph, just realize that if you want this a certain way, just remember that sometimes you have to invert the graph and do it this way as opposed to the other way, or the trees will not be happy. They'll be upside down, and you don't want upside down trees.
you love socks, you gotta be making some Finnish socks, because they are like the snuggliest, like coziest socks ever. I really encourage you to, grab your needles and get some yarn and, get some Finnish sock patterns and go to town, because they are just beautiful. Thank you for following me on this little history lesson. I'm sure there's a lot more history about Finnish socks. This was just a very short, very, very short presentation. So thank you, and I hope this encourages you to make some Finnish socks, because they be gorgeous.